Hello everyone. So in this lesson, we'll be looking at the use and formation of the Greek letters. The use and formation of the Greek letters. So the Greek uppercase letters are the oldest form of the Greek letters, right? They are found in ancient manuscripts, or ancient inscriptions, I should say. They are found in ancient inscriptions and are used in modern printed books to begin proper nouns, paragraphs, and direct speech, where English would use quotation marks. Greek sentences do not, however, begin with capital letters. The lowercase letters are therefore of greater importance than the capitals and should be mastered first. The following diagram shows you how to form Greek lowercase letters. So let me just remove this out of the way. We'll soon come to that. So let's look at how you form Greek lowercase letters. So you start, so you start here to the right and you go this way, right? You go that way. For the B, you start here, then you go that way, right? So in here for the gamma, you start here, then you go that way, then you go around, right? Then the delta, you start this way, and you come around, right? You get the gist, right? You get the gist. So take your time. You want to practice with this chart. Look at the chart. Whether you want to follow the arrows or not, that's up to you. But the key is to ensure that you have an idea, so to speak, as to how to write. And this section just give you an idea as to how to write, right? The arrows indicate the easiest place to begin when writing. Notice that many of the letters can be made without lifting pen from paper. Example, beta and rho are formed with a single stroke beginning at the bottom. Be very careful to distinguish the following pairs of letters, phi and psi. So you want to ensure that, you kind of come across, kind of thing like that. And nu and upsilon, right? You want to keep those, you want to keep those clear, so to speak. And then you have gamma and omicron and sigma, right? So just be careful with these letters so that once you know your letters, you get a good idea of your letters, then you shall be able to distinguish them and not confuse them, right? When you see them and when you're writing them. In this section, I just want to, since the first one is short, I just want to talk about breathing marks. Now, every Greek word beginning with a vowel or a diphthong has a symbol over it called a breathing mark, okay? The rough breathing mark, which is like an open quotation mark. So let's see if we have this here. Okay, that's the rough breathing mark. Indicates that the word is to be pronounced with the initial sound H, right? The smooth breathing mark, which is like the closed quotation mark, which is this one, indicates that the word lacks the initial H sound. So there is nothing, right? No H. Thus N, notice hen, En here. This is epsilon nu, but notice there's a rough breathing mark. Is the word for one is pronounced hen because you're adding what? You're adding the H. And end, remember, see it here, there's no rough breathing mark in, right? So in this case, there's no H because you have a smooth breathing mark. Whenever you have a rough breathing mark, think about this, you just add an H, right? The breathing mark is always placed over the second vowel of a diphthong. Remember, we were introduced to diphthongs earlier. Diphthongs are two vowels coming together to produce one sound. So you have eulogetos, but notice this is a close quotation, so it's a smooth breathing mark, right? And it's over the second vowel, not the epsilon, but the upsilon. Which means blessed. Then you have initial rho and upsilon always have the rough breathing mark, as in rhema. Notice it's over the rho, but it's rough word, and hypokrites over the upsilon, rough breathing mark, hypocrite. When used with rho, however, the rough breathing is generally not pronounced. For instance, rhetoric or rhodonderon. When the initial vowel is a capital letter, the breathing mark is placed to the left of it, as in capital A, capital alpha in this case, and there's a smooth breathing mark, so we have it beside the capital alpha, which is Abraham. And you have Hebraios, so since you have an epsilon at the beginning, and then you have a rough breathing mark. In this case, you have Hebraios, and that's the word for Hebrew. So breathing marks, how I look at it is that you have, for instance, you have a close quotation mark, and you have, you have open quotation and close quotation. And there were two brothers in the Bible. One had rough skin, one had smooth skin, right? And one of the ways I always say, the rough skin one was who? The rough skin one was Esau, right? And the smooth skin one was Jacob, right? So in that case, I always say the rough breathing mark is Esau, smooth breathing mark is Jacob. And when you see an Esau, you just know you add an H, right? Rough breathing mark. And when you see a Jacob, he's smooth skin. So no breathing mark, so to speak. No H is added. Hope that helps, but that's it for breathing marks. So let's continue. Let's look at Greek punctuation. Although punctuation marks were not used in ancient Greek, they are found today in all printed editions of the Greek New Testament, which is where we are going to spend our time, right? Greek has 4 marks of punctuation. You have the comma, the period, corresponding in both form and function to the English comma and period. Then you have the colon and the question mark. Notice that the question mark is written like a semicolon. Okay? So you have the comma, then you have the period mark, then you have the semicolon. Then you have the colon, and then you have the semicolon, which is the question mark. So these are the 4 punctuation marks, right? So since there is no punctuation in the early manuscripts of the Greek New Testament, the punctuation of modern printed editions is often a matter of what? Interpretation, right? We're not claiming that the punctuation is the word of the Lord, because it's human beings who put the punctuation there, all right? So let's look. So John 1, 3b to 4, moreover, because Greek has no quotation marks in several New Testament passages, it remains uncertain where direct speech begins and ends. Example, Jesus' discourse with Nicodemus in John 3. Many persons are saying that there are certain things that Jesus said, certain things that the author says, and it's difficult to know who says what. Did Jesus quote John 3:16, or did the author writes John 3:16 based upon what his understanding of what Jesus was saying to Nicodemus and all of that? Anyhow, this is not the class for that, but the punctuations to some degree determines how speech flows. And like, for instance, let me just give an example. With the Lord's table, the Lord's communion, right? Let's say drink, I'm going to use the old King James Version, right? Drink ye all of it, right? I'm just going to write it twice because I'm going to punctuate it differently. And this has to do with, the wine at the communion table. So let me put it here. Put the first punctuation here. So this is option 1. So the punctuation goes after ye, or you. Drink you. Right? Now, let me put the punctuation after all on option 2. Drink you all. Now, I hope you can see the difference. Because here, the focus in the first option, this one, the focus is on what? On the drinking, right? Drink ye, right? Or you drink, or something like drink you. This one is drink you all, right? And some person take that to mean everyone should drink from the same cup. And I think in Roman Catholic circles, if I'm not mistaken, sometimes the priest just have a little cloth that he wipe, but everybody comes and drink from the same cup. Because drink ye all, because of where they put the punctuation. But if it was just a matter of drinking, then You know, you don't have to drink from the same cup. You know, but it's the drinking, it's not the cup, right? Anyhow, punctuation makes a lot of difference, all right? So just keep that in mind. So let me get rid of some of my notes here, right? Let's look at diacritical marks, right? We're going to continue with diacritical marks. Modern printed editions of the Greek New Testament employ 3 different diacritical marks. You have the apostrophe, indicates the omission of a final vowel, a short vowel before a word that begins with a vowel or diphthong, as D or to, through him, for dia or through or to. So notice that in this case, the apostrophe is inserted. Why? Because the alpha drops out, right? This process is called elision. From Latin elido, I leave out. Then you have the diaeresis, which is these 2 dots right here, occurs where 2 vowels that normally combine to form a diphthong are to be pronounced separately, as in Hezaias, the Greek form of Isaiah. John 1:23. Notice that this word consists of 4 syllables. He, you have the he, sa, I, as, not 3, he, sai, as, because you were already introduced to the fact that when you see A and I together as a diphthong, A-I-S-L-E-I, they pronounce it one sound, but now there is 2 dots. So because there's 2 dots over the iota, then you have to separate the pronunciation. So you have A-E, or A-E, right? A-za-I-as. So that's essentially what that is saying. Then it says, finally, the coronis indicates the combination of 2 words with the loss of an intermediate letter or letters. This process of merging 2 words is known as crasis, from crasis, a mingling, and is found in such English forms as am, your, and don't. You know, I refer to this as contraction. I think that's contraction is easy to remember. Like, for instance, you have you all, and then you just write you apostrophe y'all, right? Saying after, you know, if you don't remember the fancy word coronis and all of that, I just call it a contraction, right? So these are the 4 diacritical marks that you're going to be introduced to. Let me just go over them again. The first one is the apostrophe, right? So A-P-O-S-T-R-O-P-H-E. And that really used to show that a letter is missing, right? The second one you're going to come across is the... I said 4. It's actually 3. Sorry about that. 3... It's kind of like, wait, where's the 4th one? So it's 3. The second one you're going to come across is the diaeresis. This is diaeresis, and that just separates diphthongs, right? Like, it separates 2 dots over the second vowel of a diphthong. That tells you isolate the pronunciation of those 2 vowels, right? And then the last one is contraction. I just call it contraction because you have I am, okay? Then you have put an apostrophe, okay? You contract 2 words together. So these are the 3 diacritical marks that you're going to encounter in Greek, right? All right, let's run on. So let's talk about accents. Not only are there 3 diacritical marks, there are also 3 accents that you're going to encounter. I don't know why Greek love 3 so much, right? The first accent is the acute. The second one is the grave. And the third one is the circumflex, right? The importance of accents for the study of Greek is twofold. 1, accents occasionally distinguish between words that are otherwise identical. Example, look at A means if, but A with the accent over the iota, notice the little circumflex over the iota, means you are. So now you are dealing with a different word, right? Accents in that case distinguish between 2 words, right? Secondly, accents serve to indicate which syllable in a word is to be stressed in pronunciation. Otherwise, it is possible to read New Testament without knowing any more about accents. As in, you don't need to know all that. You're not going to sing the text like Hebrew and all of that. So these 2 things, which syllable is stressed and to differentiate between words, these are really the main 2 reasons for learning accents. And these are the 3 accents that you're going to come across: the acute, the grave, and the circumflex. Then he continues. In subsequent lessons, accents will be treated where relevant. For those with a special interest in learning the rules of Greek accentuation, Appendix 1 provides a detailed summary. The Greek accents were invented about 200 BC, so that's 200 years after Christ, pretty much, as an aid to the correct pronunciation of Greek among foreigners, because native speakers know where to stress certain words, right? The accents originally indicated pitch rather than stress. The acute marked a rise in the voice, and the circumflex marked a rise followed by a fall. The grave accent was not usually used. Accents were not regularly employed in texts until after the 5th century AD. So that's just a quick introduction to accents. And you could go back over and look at the 3 accents and the cases in which they are used. 1, they are used to differentiate between words, and 2, they are used to tell you what part of a word is stressed in pronunciation. And this was mainly for foreigners, since native speakers know exactly where to put the stress anyway. All right. So that pretty much wraps up chapter 1, but let's go over the vocabulary. After every chapter, there's a vocabulary and assignment in certain cases. So let's go over the vocabulary. So the first word is apostolos. So you have alpha, P or pi, and you have omicron, sigma, tau, omicron, lambda, omicron, sigma. So take your time, transliterate, and take your time and go through and listen to the pronunciation that I'm giving here, and take your time, and after a while you'll be able to call these, right? So the first word is apostolos. Apostolos means apostle. Then the second word is soma, means body. Third word is phone, means sound. And the fourth word is cardia, heart. Then you have phobos, fear. And genos, race. Philippos, Philip. Exodus, departure. Then you have zoe, life. Petros, Peter. Then you have theos, which is the word for God, theos. Then you have gune, which is the word for woman, from which we get gynecology. Then you have pater, which is the word for father, from which you get paternal. Then you have psyche. This one is a little tricky. The new Greek speakers, it's going to be tricky to you, but psyche is the word for soul, psyche, from which you get psychology, but you have psyche here. Then you have polis, not police, but polis, which is city, which means political. Then you have Christos, our Lord and Savior, Christ, Christos. And notice it begins with a key. So therefore, a lot of persons are upset, ex-mass, they're getting rid of Christ. No, not really. If you understand history, many times persons used to just use a key to represent Christ, because it begins with a key. And it had the very weight, just as if you had written the entire word, So, of course, there are nefarious persons who think that they think that they're Xing out Christmas. But really, you are really just emphasizing a historical fact that the key was always used as just a simple representation of Christ, in this case. So you have Christos, which is Christos, Christos, right? Because the first letter is the key. All right, so the assignment says practice writing the Greek lowercase letters in proper order, aiming at simplicity and ease of recognition. It is helpful to pronounce the name of each letter while writing, since the name contains the sound of the letter. So the idea is just to take your time and to practice and to practice and to practice. And this is a passage here that you could transliterate from John 1 and verse 1 to 5. So this is John 1, 1 to 5. Take your time, practice, transliterate this passage, and keep up to date with me if you want help in any way. And then he says it is important to know something of the history and development of the Greek language. Try to read the article language of the New Testament in a reference book of our Bible encyclopedia. For some suggestions, he says see the bibliography given in the epilogue in section 181. So he just says, okay, as a beginner, I'm not going to spend time trying to introduce to you in the beginning of this lesson with all this information about Greek language. I want to get you in because I want to get you in the text, right? I want to get you into the text. But it's not going to hurt to go ahead and to learn and to try, get to know something else as it relates to the language. All right? Hopefully, you do that. You follow his instructions in the way that he closed the chapter so that you can at least start to transliterate and try to pronounce certain words. All right? God bless you and bless you richly.